Rhode Island, in the early 1840s, was a place caught between centuries. The Industrial Revolution was reshaping New England cities. They were swelling with new workers, and democratic participation was expanding across the United States. But Rhode Island, the state founded on radical ideas of liberty, was still governed by a document written when muskets were matchlocks and King Charles II sat on the throne. That document, the 1663 Royal Charter, imposed by Britain's King Charles II, was never meant to last forever. Yet by 1840 it still defined who could vote, who could serve in government, and who counted as a citizen. And under that charter, more than 60% of Rhode Island's white male population could not vote because they did not own enough land. Immigrants, factory workers, and the growing urban poor were locked out of political life entirely. This is the story of the moment Rhode Islanders rose up to change that. A moment when the smallest state staged one of the most dramatic battles for democracy in American history. It is the story of Thomas Wilson Dorr, a reformer who tried to rewrite the rules, and of a state that found itself with two constitutions, two governors, and two armies. And it is a story that echoes loudly, even today. To understand the Dorr Rebellion, we must begin with the charter itself. The 1663 Royal Charter was revolutionary for its time. It granted Rhode Island unusual freedoms, religious liberty, local self-rule, and broad participation, at least by 17th century standards. But it tied political power to property ownership, defining freemen as white men who owned a certain amount of real estate. Over the years, as land became scarce and industrialization drew thousands into cities, the system grew increasingly exclusionary. By the 1830s, Rhode Island was the only state still operating under a colonial charter. Every other state had written its own constitution. Every other state had expanded voting rights. Rhode Island's government, however, remained frozen in time. The result was a political system dominated by rural landowners, even as the state's population shifted towards urban industrial communities. Providence, Pawtucket, and Woonsocket were booming, but their workers had no political voice. The tension was explosive. By 1840, frustration had reached a breaking point. Reformers formed the Rhode Island Suffrage Association, organizing rallies, parades, and public meetings. They argued that a government claiming to represent the people must actually allow the people to vote. Among those reformers was Thomas Wilson Dorr, a well-educated lawyer from a prominent Providence family. Dorr was not a radical by temperament. He was thoughtful, principled, and deeply committed to constitutional order. But he believed the charter government had become illegitimate. A government that excluded the majority of its adult male population, he argued, could not claim to be Republican in the spirit of the United States Constitution. When the General Assembly refused to act, the suffrage movement took matters into its own hands. In 1841, the Suffrage Association convened a People's Constitutional Convention. Delegates from across the state, many of them disenfranchised workers, gathered to draft a new constitution. Their proposed document expanded voting rights to all white men, regardless of property, and offered limited suffrage to black men as well. The People's Constitution was put to a vote, not by the General Assembly, but by the people themselves. Thousands participated, including many who were not legally allowed to vote under the charter. The Constitution passed overwhelmingly. In April 1842, elections were held under the new Constitution. Thomas Dorr was elected governor. At the same time, the charter government held its own election and re-elected Samuel Ward King. Rhode Island now had two governments, each claiming legitimacy. The stage was set for confrontation. The charter government refused to recognize Dorr's election. Governor King declared the People's Constitution illegal and warned that any attempt to enforce it would be treated as insurrection. Dorr, meanwhile, believed he had been elected by the true sovereign power, the people. He attempted to organize a parallel government, appointing officials and preparing to take control of state institutions. Tensions escalated quickly. Both sides mobilized militias. Both sides issued proclamations. Both sides believed they were defending democracy. In May 1842, the conflict turned violent. On the night of May 17, 1842, Dorr and his supporters marched on the state arsenal in Providence. Their goals were to seize weapons and assert the authority of the people's government. But the attack failed. The cannon Dorr attempted to use misfired, and his small force retreated. The charter government responded with force. Governor King declared martial law, and militia units from across the state, including a company of black militiamen loyal to the charter, mobilized to suppress the rebellion. Dorr attempted one final stand in the village of Chepachet, where he hoped to reconvene the people's legislature. But when more than 500 militia marched against him, his supporters scattered. Dorr fled the state. The rebellion was over. With the rebellion crushed, the charter government moved swiftly to restore order. Hundreds of Dorrites were arrested. Dorr himself was charged with treason, but something remarkable happened. Even as the government punished the rebels, it recognized that the underlying grievances were real. In November 1842, the General Assembly called for a constitutional convention. The resulting 1843 Constitution dramatically expanded voting rights, eliminating most property requirements, and modernizing the state's political structure. In other words, the rebellion failed, but its goals succeeded. Dorr returned to Rhode Island in 1843 and surrendered. He was sentenced to life in prison, though he served only 1 year before being released under public pressure. His conviction was overturned many years later in 1854, the year he died. Today, we may view the Dorr Rebellion as a pivotal movement in the expansion of American democracy, a reminder that political systems must evolve or risk losing legitimacy. The Dorr Rebellion is one of Rhode Island's most dramatic and least understood stories. It is a tale of idealism, conflict, courage, and unintended consequences. It is a reminder that democracy is never a finished project, but a living system that must be renewed by each generation. Thomas Wilson Dorr failed in his moment, but his vision reshaped the state. Rhode Island emerged with a more inclusive constitution, a broader electorate, and a renewed commitment to representative government. And today, as Americans continue to debate who gets to vote, how elections should be run, and what legitimacy means, the echoes of 1842 remind us that the struggle for a fair and responsive democracy is never truly over. In the smallest state, a big question was asked: who deserves a voice? The answer, then and now, shapes the future of the nation. Thank you for viewing this video. Please consider liking the content and subscribing to our channel. Let us know what you think in the comments below and suggest stories you'd like to see next.